Welcome to Will's Personal Development Podcast, where we bring you data and science-backed answers and advice from billionaires. What's up, everyone? My name is Will, and we have a very, very special episode of my personal development podcast. This episode is really, really special because we're going to be covering one of the most important topics, I think, in terms of personal development, because it's a keystone topic. I think if you get this one right, the rest kind of just follows through. Like if you can master this skill, everything else kind of works through, because, you know, every other area of success kind of in some way depends, at least in part, on this. So what is it? Well, we're going to be talking about the secret to self-discipline. Another word for self-discipline is willpower, which coincidentally is also my name, Will. So let's start by quickly defining it, and then we'll get into the science, and then we're going to talk to some billionaires. And once you get the why down, then we're going to be talking about how you can actually improve your self-discipline. But you probably already have some ideas about what this is, and it's pretty straightforward. So self-discipline or willpower, it's basically the ability to do what you don't want to do or resist temptation. And I think the biggest example for an average person is when they really want to exercise. They know how important exercise is, but they can never get a consistent exercise schedule. It just doesn't stick. Or they know they need to sleep a certain amount of hours to stay healthy and productive, but they end up staying up late, watching TV, or snacking. And of course, they know people who are just like on point. Maybe it's their friend who's like clockwork. They're always at the gym at 6 a.m. every day, and they've been doing it for 10 years. And this other guy, he's getting like 10 hours of sleep, and he's just killing it. He's making tons of money. How do they do it? How come they're so disciplined? How come I cannot be like this? So I have some answers for you, and this is something I have studied for years and years and struggled with for years and years and years. I was the worst. I had the worst sleeping schedule. There were periods of my life where my parents' restrictions were just lifted. I was in school, or it was like spring or summer or winter break, and there was no control there. And my schedule got so screwed up because of the video games and everything else that I was sleeping in the daytime and waking up at night. I did not see the sun, and I hated it because I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't go to any stores. I couldn't buy groceries. And I just couldn't help it because I'm genetically a night owl. So I just kept staying up later and later and pushing my limits. And I tried all these different techniques and stuff. And so long story short, I'm better now. I'm not the best, but I really want to share with you what I've learned, because I have watched so many videos on this. I know not everything, but I know a lot about this. I mean, every video you can think of on YouTube about this topic, I could probably name. I wouldn't go exceptionally far to say I'm like the master of this, because I'm like you. I'm just someone who's struggling more than the average person, which really spurs me and motivates me to figure this out. And even Terry Crews, he's a very famous, well-known, high-paid actor. He's done videos on willpower. That's how well I know this topic. He did a few videos on this fairly recently on YouTube, on his personal YouTube channel, and it only got like 10,000 views. But in one of them, he literally spent the whole video talking about how important it was and how it led to his success in life, and how he became like an all-star NFL athlete. And then when he lost it all and was like broke again, how he built that up into a successful acting career simply off of willpower. And then in another video, he goes into like explaining what you can do to improve willpower. So let's just get I've defined it. Let's go into what a billionaire has to say about this. We'll touch a little bit more on why it's important, and then we'll get into solving this, because I don't want to spend the whole time here or most of it just telling you why it's important. I mean, I could bring up tons of examples, but I think you already know how important it is. I'm just going to leave with one little quote. So this is from the billionaire Andrew Mason. He's the co-founder of Groupon and Detour. And I got this from a book I read on time management secrets of billionaires. The book is called 15 Secrets Successful People Know About Time Management, The Productivity Habits of 7 Billionaires, 13 Olympic Athletes, 29 straight-A students, and 239 entrepreneurs. It's a really long title. I think they may have keyword stuffed the title a bit too much, but what's interesting is this author, she cold emailed most of the people she got to respond in this book, which is amazing. And she got quite a few billionaires to respond too, which is equally impressive and a lesson in and of itself. But here's what Andrew Mason said. Now, really listen to this, because it's really important. He says, I often meet people who seem smarter than me, yet are less capable because they don't have the self-discipline and or self-confidence to introspect on their ability to do what they think they're going to do and find ways to iteratively improve. Amazingly, it's as simple as that. It's kind of a sore spot for me because I can't understand why people don't take it more seriously. Then he goes on to say, if he was playing a video game that replicates real-life business, and he had 10 points to distribute into his skills, he'd put 7 into discipline and 3 into intelligence. So what does that tell me? It tells me that he values discipline more than how smart you are. And he clearly has met a lot of people who are smarter than he is, and yet for some reason they're not as successful as he is because they don't have the self-discipline or self-confidence to do what they have to do, and then improve on why they're not doing what they have to do, or if they are, improve so that they can do it even better. It's as simple as that. And I think because it's so simple and humans like to overcomplicate things, that's why people look for some magic pill or complex solution and remain mediocre with their results in life. And of course, this billionaire, he's really pissed about it because he wants to help people, but he's saying it's a sore spot because he can't understand why people don't just take it more seriously and improve on it. And this is a key theme I found in my research in self-development. Again, the book Outliers is a great starting point for this, but it's this whole false misconception and belief that how smart you are in genetics are the only determinants of your success in life. That's just strictly not true. There's hard work, self-discipline, all sorts of other stuff, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, many of which you can improve. And of course, I'm on this journey together with you. And so it really inspires me because I'm above average, but I'm definitely not the smartest person in the world by any means. So it's great to know that I got hope and I can actually improve. So let's move on from why this is important. Let's just get to how I solve this. So I've tried a lot of things, a lot of techniques, a lot of people telling you stuff, especially if you go on certain websites. There's plenty of people who are more than willing to give you advice, but then when you put it into practice, you realize, okay, I shouldn't have trusted that person. Maybe I should have checked his credibility first, because some of these people, they're just there's no credibility behind them. They're just a random person online telling you what to do. So here's the first technique, and I'll give my credibility and so forth. But this, out of all the stuff that didn't work, here's one thing that did work. And of course, I've read it all. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, etc., etc. This one technique, I think it's really worked well. I call it the nibble technique. It's just like a fancy term, but it's very simple. I choose a ridiculously easy prerequisite, and then I make that into a habit. So here's a very simple example. I told myself, just spend 2 minutes at the gym every day. And it was so ridiculously easy to do that I couldn't help but not do it. But here's how I kept that from falling apart. I knew from my past behavior of just like never going to the gym consistently that if I spent time at the gym, I would end up spending too much time there. 20 minutes would turn into 3 hours and I would burn out and not go again for 2 weeks. So what I did was I set a time where I had to leave the gym. And so that was 2 minutes. It got me into the gym, and once I had that set in stone and turned into a really strong habit I knew I wouldn't break, then I slowly and gradually increased the time. And then I increased it to 5 minutes per day, which was very doable. And it was just so easy and small that it didn't overwhelm me. And I made sure to increase it very, very slow and gradually, which was important because otherwise it would have overwhelmed me. And it's been about a year, and I have been very, very consistent, surprisingly. And it's great. It feels great. I'm just really impressed, and I feel like I've achieved something. And it's because I truly have been going on and off for over 5 years to the gym and seeing mediocre to no results because of that. But now I've finally locked it in. So I'm very, very happy about that. And I highly recommend trying something like that. I kind of stumbled across it myself, but later on, again, this isn't an ego thing. I don't really care who invented this, but I do know that Ramit Sethi, he's a very well-known entrepreneur. His blog, he's also made a blog post about this where he pretty much embedded a YouTube video where he interviewed one of his old mentors, BJ Fogg. And I think BJ Fogg said something similar. Basically, he says that you want to set up your gym clothes the night before, so it's very seamless and there's no like pushback. You want to eliminate any type of pushback. And I think Ramit, he said that he used a toothbrushing analogy. Rather than trying to floss all your teeth, go from not flossing any teeth to flossing all your teeth, you just start by flossing one extra tooth that day. And there's such a small increase that you can't help but not do it. So I just, I really don't care about credit. I just care about if it works. So you know what? I'm just going to credit Ramit Sethi for this. Even though I think I came up with this before him. Nonetheless, let's move on to the second thing that's worked. And this is really the only other thing. And again, this video is not on really improving self-discipline. It's a different topic. But let me first just talk about what the second technique is. So the second thing is very simple. I try to make what I do as fun, interesting, and enjoyable as possible. And you might be like, oh, of course, that's common sense. But common sense is not so common. I spent quite a while not really focusing on that, and then doing things that I thought were pretty fun or interesting, but turned out not to be as fun as I thought. And I was actually convincing myself that they were more fun than they were. At some point, I burned out. And I'll give you a great example. Fairly recently, I burned out on writing blog posts and guest posts for my blog, WillYouLaugh.com. and I just straight out burned out. I was doing it because I wanted to grow my audience, and I thought it was fun enough, writing these posts about self-development. But after a certain point, I can't remember how many posts I wrote. It wasn't as massive as some of these other bloggers do. Like some of them will do hundreds every few months. I think I did maybe like a dozen, but I put a decent amount of time into it, and at some point I just burnt out. It was after a few months of doing these, and it just took up all my time. Every moment of free time I had, I would put into this. And one day I just overheard people my age just discussing how they live their lives. Like, oh, I just watched Netflix today. I took a nap, did this. And it was just so relaxed and like, no sense of productivity, work ethic, awareness of time management, but they were enjoying lives. They were so relaxed that it just shocked me out of my system, and I just felt so burnt out all of a sudden. And I realized it was because I wasn't enjoying what I did. It wasn't interesting and fun, and I wasn't passionate enough about it as I thought. So I've always been trying to make this more and more fun, and it's not easy to do. I think if it were easy, then everyone would be rich beyond belief and their passions would be making tons of money. But sometimes just by the economics of life, some people will tell you, oh, you can become rich doing anything you want. I don't think the world is there yet. Just adding a dose of realism. Some people like Gary Vaynerchuk will say, he's actually said this, even if you were passionate about worms, you could be the expert on worms and you would make 6 figures from it. Well, in theory, that is true, but that's also saying that you have to be the best in the world, which takes a lot of effort, hustle, competition, especially when it's fun, because a lot of fun things leads to more competition. That's why it's so hard to be one of the top video game YouTubers. They make a lot of money, but there's so much competition there. And so it's not easy, but I'm always striving to do this. One thing I've done recently is I use Pokemon Go to exercise and run more, because you can hatch eggs by running more. And I've been a huge Pokemon fan for my whole life. My first version was Silver, followed by Red, followed by I think Gold, and then Sapphire. So I've been a Pokemon addict my whole life. Not addict, but I've been a fanatic of that game. And so I have made exercise more fun by using Pokemon Go on my phone to exercise. And I'm still, experimenting with stuff. I'm just still haven't really figured out how to really make blog posts even more fun. One thing that I've picked up from PewDiePie, the most subscribed YouTuber, is sometimes you just gotta do what you love. And even if that means going off topic a bit on your blog post to maybe something you're more interested in that's not maybe aligned with what your audience is, if it will keep you engaged and having fun, that might be the better thing to do. And PewDiePie's definitely done that, because if it's not fun to you and it's just about money, then what's the point? You'll get burnt out. And, if you're spending 8 hours a day working at something that's you don't enjoy and you can't spend money during that time, it's like, is it worth it really? So it's not easy, but that's the next thing. Because at some point, no matter what you're doing, if it's not, you will burn out at some point. And another quick tip I learned from another well-known podcaster, Dan Sullivan, is sometimes it's just about uncharging and doing quote-unquote unproductive stuff occasionally, maybe on the weekends, to recharge so you never burn out. Dan Sullivan, he is a entrepreneurial coach. He's coached thousands of entrepreneurs. He's very successful in his field. And he answered a question on his podcast, 10X Talk, about this about burning out. And he says he's never burnt out because he would spend the weekends just doing something completely unrelated to work, having fun, enjoying his life. And because of that, he was able to recharge, and he never burnt out after like 40 years of work. So those are the two big things in terms of actually getting what's done. Now, let's now start focusing on tips to improve your self-discipline and willpower. So what I talked about just now were the two big things in terms of actually turning what you don't want to do into habits. But now let's talk about improving this skill. So there's been a lot of studies done on this topic. And what you need to know is that willpower or self-discipline, whatever you want to call it, it's like a muscle. Some people like the battery analogy, but I like the muscle analogy better. Why? Because they use the battery analogy to symbolize the fact that willpower is like a battery which gets depleted and recharged with sleep and rest. And what that means is that with poor depleted willpower, you will make worse decisions. You will be unable to do things that you don't want to do less effectively when it's depleted. You will be unable to resist temptation from a temptress when you're already married. That's why most adultery happens late at night when the husband is tired and comes home from work. That's why studies have been done on judges, and judges will sentence less people to be innocent as the day progresses because they get more and more tired. Studies have been done to track this. So that's where the battery analogy comes in. But I like the muscle analogy better because muscles also deplete like a battery, but also they grow through stimulation. So it's explaining 2 points of willpower that's really important. The first is that they do get depleted, and then the second is that they get stronger with practice, like a muscle, which the battery example doesn't really illustrate. And now these are really, really important. Why is that? Well, with the the depletion thing, it means that you need to protect and safeguard your willpower. Everyone has a limited amount on a day-to-day basis, and President Obama understands this very well. You can search this up. There's been interviews done on this. He said that he understands that his decision-making energy is limited on a daily basis. Therefore, he makes sure that he does not make any unnecessary decisions to save that limited willpower. Ramit Sethi calls it cognitive misers. But the point is, Obama, when he was president, he made sure to wear the same suit every day. His breakfast was picked out for him. His clothing was picked out for him because he did not want to make even the most minor decisions. He did not want to because he wanted to save that for the global game-changing decisions in life. Of course, the same thing can be applied to you in your life, to CEOs, to anyone, whatever you're doing. And I think that's really important. You don't have to go so extreme if you're not making game-changing decisions. Sure, go ahead and pick out your cereal. But it speaks to maybe why a lot of CEOs, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, wear the same clothing every single day. It's called decision fatigue, and it is a real thing. Personally, I think it's also partially just because they sucked with fashion. They were standard guys just like me who don't really think about fashion much and just pick up and wear whatever's close to them. Having said that, I do think that on some level, partially, they know the importance of decision fatigue. And if they don't, they should, because it's really important to making the best decisions in your life. And I'm definitely not saying fashion is not important. Fashion is important as well. There's also been studies done on that. That's a talk for another day. but there have been studies done, and literally you can say the exact same thing, present the exact same way, and the salesperson who's dressed better will close more deals. But back to self-discipline, the point is you have to safeguard it. So what do? You set up systems so that you do not have that temptation unnecessarily in your life. You do not have meaningless decisions to make. And if you do, you put them towards the end of the day rather than the beginning. So here's just an example of my own life. Again, it's not a perfect system, but this is just what I've come up with to safeguard against. Again, of course, you have that Obama example. But here's what I do. When I drive home, I always make sure that I don't go past any fast food restaurants, because that's when I'm most vulnerable, when I'm most exhausted, and most prone to temptation. I also make sure, I would make sure if you have a wife or a girlfriend, that you don't, expose yourself to tempting people later in the day, especially if you have a really exhausting, energy consuming job. Maybe drive home another way, maybe just, set up some systems that you don't even see the person that might tempt you to cheat on your wife. Another thing is, at the start of the days, I really always make sure, this is more of a productivity tip, I start with the most important task. And the reason for that is pretty obvious, so that I'm not starting the day with unimportant or more minor tasks that require unnecessary decision making. Again, a lot of CEOs, I was recently reading a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. It's a very well-known book in the sales industry. And he basically said he does something similar. He sets up a office system so that no one can really ask him questions, ask him to make decisions throughout the day on certain days of the week. And it really, lets him buckle down on what's important and prevents him from depleting his willpower. I think he even puts a note on his office door. And then he says, you can only message me at the end of the week or at our scheduled meeting to talk about this. And that way it prevents interruptions and all sorts of good stuff that improves productivity. So those are just some tips that might help you with conserving your willpower. So that's really important. Of course, the last one is probably email. It's probably like the worst culprit of unnecessary decision making. I mean, you're choosing or not choosing to be at the whim of all these random emails. You don't know if it's important or unimportant email, and 90% of the time it's an unimportant email with a moderate to low priority question that asks you to make a decision that you don't need to make, that depletes your willpower. So I'm always very cognizant of that. You don't have to go crazy. I think I'm maybe a little bit too crazy about that. So I've been toning it down. Like sometimes, I'm still young. If anyone else asks me for which cereal I want or something like that, and I just bust out you shouldn't tell me to do this because of the willpower studies and all this stuff. It's just too weird. And of course, I'm not some world leader yet, so I don't need to go so extreme. And that's something I'm working on. Another thing is I just want to highlight one more study. Long story short, the study basically had two groups of people. One group that had to resist not eating plain chocolate chip cookies for 5 minutes. Another group who didn't have to go through that temptation. And then they tested them on math. They both took a math exam. And of course, the group that were not resisted, they did better. So what that tells me is that even the smallest temptations have some effect on your battery. So keep that into account. So now I want to turn to specific ways of improving your willpower and self-discipline. Now, of course, if you want a really, really, really comprehensive blog post about this, if you just go to my blog, willyoulaugh.com, and you search willpower, you will find it. Or you could just go to Google and search willyoulaugh.com space willpower, And you'll probably find it there faster because Google's more accurate than my blog search function. But if you really want to go into detail, you can go there. But if you just want like the concise bang, bang, bang hit points, I'm going to give it to you right here. So these come from the book Mate, Become the Man Women Want. This is a very new book that was written by Dr. Geoffrey Miller and Tucker Max. They run their own podcast called the Mating Grounds Podcast. It recently ended, but all the episodes are still fresh and archived, so you can still listen to them all. And the basic idea behind this book is it's A to Z dating advice book for men. And I discovered it recently. And what makes this book different is basically it's extensively and thoroughly science-backed, and it covers the whole spectrum from A to Z. And I think the big difference is that up until this point, 99% of dating advice has been a pseudoscience at best. It's not rigorous. It's not scientific. It's not non-biased. There's no control groups. It's just been, some random guy who may not know what he's talking about, trying random crap out and then throwing stuff on the wall and seeing what sticks and calling it the science of attraction, which is false. So this book actually has a lot of science to back it up. And one of the things it asserts is that one of the most attractive things that you can do is, have willpower. So how do you improve your willpower? This book goes into detail on specific things that you can do to improve your willpower over time. Now, this will not happen overnight. If you're looking for a one-night magic pill, that's not the type of people I want to attract. That's not how it works. It's kind of like same thing with exercise or anything else. You got to put in the hard work over a sustained period of time. And if you're willing to do that, then you will get results. So the first thing they say is set goals and accomplish them. Now, it might seem a bit common sense. When I first read that, I was like, okay, that's a bit common sense, but you have to dive a little bit into the details here. So it's actually really good. So what they're actually saying here is that if you can set really good goals, and they basically say don't just set any goals, but set a single realistic specific goal with a specific deadline, action date, that's fun as well, you will succeed. Now you might be like, oh, that's a lot of details. Well, those details are there for a reason, and a lot of other successful people, I mean, there's tons of books about goal setting. They all have a very similar theme behind it. Ramit Sethi, he actually just wrote a blog post about this, actually. I just read it the other day, and it was very, very similar to this. Is it because all these people gather together and they discuss exchanging the same process? Or is it because a lot of people converge on the same idea, unaware of each other, on the same process to success? I believe it's the latter, the second one. And the reason why there's so many details on how to set a goal is because if you keep it to some broad, vague goal, you're not going to achieve it. Like, what does it mean to be rich? If you just say, I want to be rich as a goal, that's so broad and vague. Rich could mean $1 million, or it can mean 100,000 to someone else. Well, when do you achieve this? What if you get it when you're 120 years old? It doesn't let you measure it. It doesn't let you measure your progress, make changes, analyze what worked, what didn't, and improve. It's just like a broad, vague goal, which sets you up to always push it off into the future and procrastinate. So that's why setting these specific action-based goals with deadlines that are realistic, accomplishable, and fun helps you actually achieve them. And, I think the fun part, again, as I mentioned, it's really important. So my big tip for you is think of it like a genie. Have you ever seen that movie, Aladdin, where he rubs a lamp and a genie pops out, and the genie pretty much says, you can wish for anything you want. Well, there's some genies in the myths and folklore that come with that story. And some of those genies are very sinister, where basically they'll grant you any wish, but then they'll twist that wish and really screw you over. So like you might say like, I want to be on a tropical island, and then they'll strand you in some like horrific island with no water or food. Or I want to be rich and famous, and then they'll ruin your life with paparazzi. The basic idea, again, there's also been movies done on like with the similar plot theme, but the basic idea is that they actually grant your wish, but you weren't specific enough with your wish, and it screws you over. So think of outsmarting the genie when you're setting your goals. And by doing this, you'll actually start achieving more goals, or at least moving towards improving on achieving those goals. So let's just throw an example out there just to make sure that you hit this home. So real quick, let's say that I want to improve my social skills, which I actually do because I'm a deep introvert. And so I want to make an effort to talk to 3 people. Actually, 3 might be too much. 2 people that I initiated the conversation with that I never would have talked to otherwise on a day-to-day basis. And so for me, that's it's tough but still achievable, and it's measurable because it's specific. It's 2 people, not just a random vague number like people. Or I made sure to put a number in there, and of course, I'll make it fun. So I'll be like, I'll talk to these people and try and make them laugh. And so it becomes something that's fun as well. And because I know from my past experience that I'll get psyched out if I put any value into this, or if I feel like I'm trying to impress them or anything like that. So I will also make it even more specific by saying I will talk to these 2 people and try and make them laugh and have a good time, with no intention at all to impress them or do anything else. They can be guy or girl. And that's that, And the last thing would just be a deadline. So it's every day. So by the end of the day, I have, I can measure myself and see if I'm accountable to that. So that's kind of how you do it. The next thing that they say that you should do is forgive yourself if you mess up. Now, this is one that Terry Crews in his YouTube video also really talks about. And out of anyone, I think Terry Crews is someone I really respect in a lot of ways. I'm not saying he's perfect, but he has achieved success in multiple areas of his life that most men want to. When you think about it, most men, they don't even achieve success in one of these areas. Most men, they're not rich, they're overweight, they're not jacked, they're not famous, they're not actors, they don't love their job. But Terry, he's done all of these things. He's jacked beyond belief. If you've ever seen any pictures or in any of his movies, like he is he's chiseled beyond belief. And then on top of that, he's always positive, always happy. He's really wealthy, famous. He succeeded in one of the most competitive industries in the world, acting. And so I bring that up because you would think that Terry is just someone who can do no wrong. He's this guy who is always on his grind. Maybe he's genetically gifted. He never misses a day of working out, and he's very disciplined. And he is very disciplined. But he did this YouTube video on his YouTube channel. If you just search Terry Crews YouTube channel, you'll find it. on willpower, and he said it's okay if you make mistakes. When he was working out, even he had days where he missed a workout day, or he couldn't help but eat junk food. And of course, over time, he gradually again, this guy's been working out for decades, like 30 plus years. So again, you don't want to compare yourself too much to him. He's like 40, in his late 40s now, maybe 50s. So that's another huge fallacy. A lot of young people, like in their 20s, will compare themselves to someone in their 50s. It's just not a good comparison. You should only compare yourself to you. Anyhow, he basically said, it's okay. Forgive yourself. Everyone makes mistakes when they're trying to be disciplined. What matters more is, are you gradually and slowly moving in the right direction? And that distinction is something that a lot of successful people bring up. And it's just so important and so overlooked. And even though I know this, even though I'm in personal development space, but I still, even though I hear about it this often, I can't help human nature and my genetics. It's a talk for another day, but genetically, we're wired to compare ourselves to other people, and it's unhealthy. We did that in the past for survival and reproduction reasons, but in the modern world, it's really bad for us, especially because a lot of people like to show off their lavish lives, and it's just very mentally unhealthy for us. So the point, forgive yourself, and as long as you're just slowly moving forward, celebrate those wins. Psychology, if you look at psychology, there's a great book called Hardwiring Happiness on this. And the main point of this book, the book is that the study of the biology of the brain reveals that it's almost a 10-to-1 ratio of how we weigh good events to bad events, which means one insult may require up to 10 compliments to overcome. We latch on and dwell on the negative so much more. And because of that, it's very unhealthy for us. And so what that means for you is you really have to celebrate your wins. That's another point that they mention in this book. Really celebrate your wins. And it might seem simple or a chore to do, or pointless until you look at the studies. And if you read Hardwire Happiness, you come out of it and you're like, I got to do this, because otherwise you forget about this. And I'm a huge culprit of this. You know, a bunch of decent or good things will happen, and I'll come out of that day and I'll be like, it was a crappy day, because of that one thing that went wrong, or because I would just forget about the bad things. So to just give you a more concrete example, this happens fairly often. You know, I'll have a pretty average day and I'll talk to a bunch of people, but you know, one event occurred where I was maybe a bit too introverted and I didn't talk to anyone at the event, for example. Or I did talk to people, but I forgot all about that because I was so focused on the one or two people that I really wanted to talk to that I didn't have the courage to talk to. And so rather than focusing and celebrating the people that I did talk to who I weren't as scared of, I would completely forget about those successes and forget to celebrate them. So one thing I do this on a weekly basis. I'm trying to turn it into a 2-minute daily habit at the end of the day, is something called a thank you jar. Now, I got this method from the Mating Grounds podcast, and they stole it from someone else, but who cares who originated it? What matters is what it is and how it can help you. It's very simple. Each time something good happens to you, you write it down. And then at the end of the day, you read those out to yourself so you don't forget. I do this on a computer. I just pop open Evernote. You could do this on Google Docs. It doesn't really matter. And I titled the document "The Jar of Awesome." And then you just anything good that happens, even if it's really small, like someone smiled at you and you smiled back, or I started a conversation for the first time with someone and I had to push outside my comfort zone to do it. Small things like that, I will put them in. And at the end of the day, I'll read these to myself. And sometimes I'm really shocked because sometimes I'll be like, I didn't do anything that great today. And then I'll look in there and I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that. So it's really great for people like me who have a tendency to negatively bias things or dwell on things more than normal. For other people, even average people who aren't like that, it is still really good for you to do this. And I will be sure to include in that jar of awesome, released an awesome podcast episode where I help people with the secret to self-discipline in there. So that's another thing. Have fun and celebrate your wins. Here's the last thing that I have for you in terms of improving willpower. Now, this doesn't come from the book Mate anymore. In the book Mate, that's really all they say about willpower. It's highly focused on goal setting and goal completion. But here's what I have to say about willpower. Willpower is something that can be strengthened, but to what extent, I don't know. What I do know is that protecting it is really important. Protecting it is something that is very clear through the studies that you should do if you have really important tasks that you need to conserve your willpower for. Focus on just one thing. You don't see a lot of people succeeding at like 10 different things or 5 different things at once. You may, and again, I'm guilty of this as well. You may be tempted by all these different things. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do that. For me, there's a ton of things that I want to improve on. I want to get stronger at the gym and fitter. And I've been really into that. But I also want to improve my copywriting. And I also want to grow my podcast audience. And I also want to become an incredible blogger. And therefore, I'm reading books on how to be a better writer. And you're pulled in all these different directions. And then there's leadership books and all these other things. And I've talked about this in my podcast episode on information overload in the analysis paralysis era. But the thing is, we have limited willpower, and therefore we have a limited amount of energy to focus that willpower on. And so if you diffuse it, your results will be diffused as well. So that doesn't mean you have to give up on other goals. It just means you set them aside until you accomplish your most important one first. So what that might mean for you is putting aside a bunch of different things and figuring out what's most important for you. Let me give you a concrete example so that you actually understand this better. Let's use what I just mentioned as myself as an example. I got all these different interests, right? What I need to do, and I think this is really important, and I've already started moving towards this, but I got to focus even more. I got to figure out, okay, well, what takes up my greatest motivation? What really keeps me motivated, and what would I want accomplished more than anything else? And I look at all these things, and it's like, okay, I don't really need to be the best writer. I don't need to do this or that. And for me, it's probably income, because with income, I can move forward with a lot of other things. With that, I can maybe hire someone to train me, or I can eat better food and therefore buy better food, and so forth, so on and so forth. And therefore, what can make me more income? And that might be, okay, I got to focus down on the one thing that is most likely to make me more income, which is blogging. And therefore, it might be actually focusing on writing. So that's just an example. You put out all the rest. I ignored the leadership books. I ignored all the other interesting books and stuff that I could read on emotional intelligence, on all this other stuff, and just focus on maybe writing and getting better at a writer until maybe my blogging takes off and I make enough income to focus on other things. So that's just an example. I don't think that writing is actually what I'm going to do, but it's just an example for you guys to better understand this. And hopefully it helped. And my final bonus tip, and this one's probably just as important, if not more important. My final bonus tip, if you're someone who just wants to set a consistent habit of going to exercise or going to sleep better, is find the right motivation for it. And out of a lot of different things I've tried, the right motivation really matters a lot. There were days where my sleeping, when I look back on my life, where my sleeping was on point. And that was because I had something I look forward to so much in the mornings. I remember one time, this was years and years ago, I had this blog in the video gaming sphere, and I grew it to millions upon millions of views. And I would always wake up early. And now it's very hard for me to wake up early because I'm a night owl. But when I was a kid, I would wake up really early. Why? Because I would look forward to 6 a.m. every day or every week, because once a week there would be a video game patch for the video game I blogged about, and it would happen early in the mornings. And I was so eager to see that. It was almost like Christmas every day. So if you can find something that motivates you, then you can really push past all the garbage and obstacles. And I found there's a couple big motivators. One is to be the best in the world at something, to be a champion. Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's a lot of free documentaries on YouTube. And if you watch his life, that's the number one reason that pushed him to work so hard and become such a great actor and bodybuilder. The second possible motivator is something fun, exciting, and interesting. Of course, this is something that, it's not easy to find. It's more of a marathon than a sprint to find your passion. So that's something else. But one thing I try and do, maybe once a month, once a week, is just kind of reflect on what I do and really figure out, what do I like? What do I not like? And just slowly try and move towards something I like better. And sometimes you can't. Like, for example, maybe you work a crappy job that you don't get to talk to anyone. And as of this moment, you can't just quit your job and find one where you get to talk to more people. So what do? You just write down, take note of the fact that I dislike not being able to talk to people. I enjoy more a job that's more sociable. So that's just one thing that you can put into your notes that you can be on the lookout for in the future. And it'll help you move towards things over time. So that's the second big motivator. And those are the two big ones that you should really think about and try and incorporate into what you do. So that's the secret to self-discipline. It's an incredible topic. And if you want further reading, I highly suggest the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller. And a close follow-up to that book would probably be The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. The main lesson you want to learn from that book is basically reward yourself when you have a habit and keep the reward the same when you're changing from a bad habit to a good habit. So that's it. And if you like this podcast episode, please go to iTunes and leave a rating and review. It would really be awesome. And even better than that would be if you just hit the subscribe button so you will be notified when I upload new podcast episodes. Because otherwise you will forget about this and then you'll never know. And you will miss out on all these golden value bombs that will just exponentially skyrocket your results in life. So it's up to you. If you really want to earn more money, have a more fulfilled, happy life, achieve more results, then this is a podcast for you. It's free. Just hit that subscribe button. So that's it. If you want to leave a rating and review, it will help this podcast get noticed more and for more people to find it. And so all you have to do is go to, I set up a link, willyoulaugh.com/podcast. And that will direct to my iTunes page. And then all you got to do there is just go hit reviews and write a review. And yeah, you can review it anything you want. I'm not pressuring you to give a 5 stars. You can give a 3-star, 4-star, 1-star, 2-star, whatever you want. But of course, I would prefer the 5-star. Thanks for watching or listening. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to Will's Personal Development Podcast. You can find more at willyoulaugh.com.